I'm Sierra, the founder of Good Juju. Welcome to Mindful Business Podcast, weekly discussions about mindfulness, entrepreneurship, and Web3. This live Twitter space is about an hour long. It's recorded and uploaded to YouTube to be played back anytime. You can click the link in our bio to subscribe to our YouTube, where you can find previous episodes about entrepreneurship, Web3, mindfulness, yoga, and more. This is episode 34, Spiritual Retreat Essentials, and I am joined by my lovely co-host, Abby, the creator of Elevate, as usual. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Spring has sprung here in the Midwest. Winter keeps trying to come back, but that doesn't really slow us down here in the Midwest. We don't care. It's spring. And so that always puts a pep in my step. And definitely thinking about spiritual retreats and planning for these things definitely puts a pep in my step. So I'm so happy to sit down and talk with you. How are you feeling after your week in New York? Are you catching up on your rest? Are you exhausted? Where are you at today on the energy scale?
Yes, we skipped last week because I was at NFT NYC, which was a really incredible experience. It was my first time going. It was also my first time speaking. I also had an opportunity to teach my first public yoga class when I was out in New York. So there was a lot of really cool stuff that happened. I met so many friends in person. It was just an awesome time. And I was kind of sad when it was over. I was like, oh no. I am readjusting and returning to normalcy, getting back into my kind of regular day to day, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it was so much fun and such a nice kind of just break from the usual, I guess.
Reentry is always kind of bumpy, I think, after going and having a wonderful experience. You might even look at a little alone time in the city as a spiritual retreat of some sort. I know when I was there last year for NFT NYC, I spent several days alone outside of the conference, spending really intentional time on my own for the intention of feeding my spirit. And so, in many ways, I found a little bit of a spiritual retreat in Central Park, which brings us to our conversation. I think that, what do you think when you think about a spiritual retreat, and what do you think that means and looks like? Could it be a trip to the city? Does it have to be a Buddhist center somewhere in the middle of nowhere? What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like I feel like most people, and myself included, when I immediately think of spiritual retreat, like kind of meditation, yoga, mindfulness, like a break from the busy day to day, and maybe some solitude, maybe just a lot of kind of intentional practices, and this, I don't want to say seclusion, but this being away. And I don't know if it's from others, from work, from your partner, but just like this kind of having an independent experience. These are things that come to mind when I think of a spiritual retreat. But to your point, I do feel like we're all different, and we all experience life in unique ways. And for some of us, like spending some time alone in a huge city could be a spiritual retreat of sorts. Like, I feel like my soul was nourished and definitely came alive last week. At one point, we were in Times Square and it was Friday night. And I kid you not, I've been to Times Square before many times, but I felt like I've never seen so many people. It had to have been thousands of people in Times Square that Friday night of NFT NYC. And it was just like, I just felt like my problems were so small, and like I just felt like, okay, I'm just like, I'm something that fits into something bigger, and I'm not like the center of the universe, like which is a good feeling sometimes, because sometimes we like over magnify our problems and our issues and what's happening in our own life, and it's good to think about how we fit into the grand scheme of things. So yeah, I think it depends on the person, but I do feel like kind of inherently when people think about these things, there are certain things that kind of come to mind. And maybe a part of this conversation has to do with like kind of breaking stigmas and kind of stereotypes about what a spiritual retreat like has to look like.
That's why I'm glad we're actually starting this conversation in this way, because I wanted to bring into this. I definitely agree that we all have this kind of initial response and picture in our mind's eye when we think of our ideal spiritual retreat, is probably what comes to mind when we think of spiritual retreat. But I like that we're having this conversation because I do think, it kind of similar to other things we've talked about. I think it's important to note that this could be a variety of things. It could be a short 24 to 48-hour thing that you plan to get away. I think, what defines it is maybe intention, that the intention is that you're going to really devote self care. I do think that there's this, as you kind of alluded to, this getting away from. That's an important piece when I think about also think about in my mind's eye a spiritual retreat. I think in our daily modern lives, we all have the best intentions, and we want to be working on our spiritual practices, and we want to work on self-care, but it's really fucking hard, right? As we've talked about for how many weeks. We're in this modern world, and many of us work online, and certainly interact socially and otherwise. And so it becomes almost impossible to ever truly unplug and get away and truly reset. We might steal an hour of the day here or there, but there's this cumulative effect that stress has, and being on devices and being on the constant go, that really kind of adds up. And until you do plan some sort of specific retreat for your body, your mind, and your soul, I don't know that you ever really do get to fully unplug and recharge and fill your batteries up. And I think that is where the springboard, right, from where you start to think about a spiritual retreat. So I do think it could be a number of things, and there are a number of intentions behind it. But I also think not every retreat out there is going to be the retreat for you. So it's good to kind of have in mind. You may not know, but that's where your research comes in. But, there's retreats for different spiritual faiths and practices that may not align with yours. And so keep looking, because there's one for everybody out. There's some local retreats here, that have been so neat, that I haven't even attended, but just the look and feel, that I think that I want to do that some weekend, like for crafters or quilters or people that do scrapbooking. There's some neat kind of out in the country facilities that you can rent for the weekend that have a kitchen and lodging and things of this nature, where there's this piece of connection, but where there's also this like alone time and quiet vibe. So I do think spiritual can look a lot of different ways to a lot of people, but I'm sure most of our conversation will focus on what we both think of as ideal. Do you have like a dream locale when you think of an ideal retreat, or have you been on one that you've really loved?
I've only had one retreat experience. It was probably four, maybe 3.5 or 4 years ago when I was living in California. It was a women's retreat, and it was at this really beautiful, kind of secluded, almost, I guess it was not a campground, but it was like a mm, communal, like park, outdoor building area. I'm trying to think of like the best way to put it. It was a building that was like by itself out in the middle of nowhere on this hill that was like overlooking a super gorgeous view of like tons of trees, like somewhere in California in the Bay Area, in like Marin. It was really beautiful. I was going because I was vending crystals for good juju. But once I got there, the people who put it together were like, oh, well, we're doing all these activities and people are going to be immersed in what we're doing. And why don't you just participate in what we're doing? And then later, when there's more free time, you can just focus on your vending. And I thought, like, okay, that's cool. Like, I've never had an experience like this. Why not? And it was really nice. It was since I had never had an experience like that, I didn't know what to expect. And there were certain points where we did meditations or kind of visualization exercises or journaling or kind of group sharing and different activities. And there were different moments where people got very vulnerable and very upset at certain points because certain things just elicited different deep emotions. So, yeah, I feel like it depends on the type of retreat. Like this was a retreat that was kind of focused on self-care, divine femininity, and like we had they had us do this cacao ceremony where we all drank it together, and then they played like this drum music, and we kind of danced around and got super sweaty and hot. Like it was really nice. It was like an all day thing. It was not like a weekend thing or a week long. It was from the morning until the dinner time situation, and it was really fun. I super enjoyed it, and I can see how experiences like that can change people, or people can make connections there that are really deep, or even, I guess, life altering in some circumstances. And that was really incredible, and an awesome experience. So when I think of retreats, obviously, as a human being, I'm biased and I go to my own experience. And that's kind of what comes to mind, was that really, this kind of sisterhood experience that I had with these women out in California a few years ago. It's something that, like, I have a photo from it that actually I'm looking at to my right. They also had this like photo booth room area where they had all these like witchy kind of goddess props, like crowns and like veils and little like ornaments and all types of things. And then they had us take these Polaroid photos, and like they dressed us up. And I have my photo and I've kept it because I just love it. It reminds me of the experience, and I have it sitting on my whiteboard. And I remember one day my mom came to my house and she saw it and she was like, "Are you in some kind of cult now? Like, what the hell is this?" Because I'm like wearing this veil and this crown, and I'm holding this huge like amethyst cluster. So I do also feel like sometimes there's a stigma that you get from other people in terms of like what you're even participating in. It definitely was not a cult experience.
I'm cracking up. You gotta love a mom coming and kind of ruining the vibe with a silly question like that. It's so funny though, and it sounds like a gorgeous picture, and it sounds like a beautiful experience, and that's definitely something my mom would also ask at that kind of a picture, which I can relate to. I think that's so funny. As you were talking about that, I was reminded of a kind of similar local retreat that I had forgotten about years ago. That was a little more focused. It was heavy on the yoga, but there was a lot of sisterhood and different activities. And as you were speaking, I was reminded of how what I love about some of these things, and what I think you can expect on a variety of these things, is that there are going to be different activities that push you out of your comfort zone a little bit. There are going to be activities that help you break down a little bit of the barrier. There's, icebreaker things, but as you said, at the end of it, you leave feeling this connection. Everyone kind of tends to start off as either complete and total strangers, or, acquaintances. Certainly, most people don't really fully know each other. And then, generally, they're put in these situations where you're like, I don't know, I feel silly. Maybe this is dumb. And as you said, suddenly there's this real level of vulnerability that begins to happen. You work through those icebreaker things. And then most of the time at these situations, there's going to be some activity that, yeah, kind of hits you in the feels, that digs deep, that asks you to be vulnerable, not only to yourself but in front of other people. And there's something really, as you said, powerful about it. It's transformative. It sticks with you. And at the very least, it's a reset. It takes you outside of your daily norm, of this accumulative stress daily thing that's happening all of the time, and it gets us to break out of that. to reset, to change our point of view and our perspective. And if it can help you kind of deepen your own spiritual journey, and again, nothing lasts forever. It's going to wear off at some point, and that's when you know, hey, I might be due for another adventure of some kind. And so you either pursue, maybe it's that same group you traveled with before, they're doing it again. I have a lady that's come on 3 or 4 different retreats with me. Or maybe it's that you are like, I really love to taste something new each time, and go to a different location. Or you might start hosting your own and get together with a group of ladies, or other groups that, like, like-minded, similar interests. You want to learn more about a certain aspect of spirituality or whatever it might be. I think, of course, it's amazing to travel, and we all love to be able to travel. Some people want to travel and can't, or whatever it might be. Timing doesn't work out. I have someone that feels really still nervous about traveling with, in a post COVID world. And so, there are all kinds of neat things that are happening all the time in all pockets and corners of probably even your local community, if you do a little bit of digging, and kind of searching out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's amazing about retreats is like there are so many different kinds. You can go on a mindfulness retreat, you can go on a yoga retreat, you can do something local, you can travel out of your way and go to a new city or state even. Like it's kind of up to you in terms of like you can go solo, you can set it up and do it with a friend. Something that I want to talk about is like, why do people take these retreats? And it's like, you know, and obviously it's kind of up to the individual, but I find it fascinating the different kind of paths that lead people to these retreats. Some people are just trying to reduce their stress. Some people are really on this journey to find inner peace and grow personally. Some people are trying to connect to a higher power and it's a more kind of spiritual experience. So I find it interesting that just like so people from so many walks of life and with so many different intentions can come into a space and like have this shared experience that's just so moving and powerful. And I'm curious, like, what personally has drawn you to taking spiritual retreats, and when you've done it, like, what are the benefits that you've felt from having that experience?
I like what you said again about many different things are drawing people in. And so, truly, in any retreat experience, there's definitely people from all walks of life. You're, on the surface, perfect strangers, but then you do find that you're connecting with people, right? Most of my retreat experiences, I've had the honor of hosting. I've done in terms of attending a lot of local things, and I've done a little traveling, but really the most unique and special retreat experiences I've had the honor of co-hosting. And what's drawn me to that has been truly a love of travel, of getting outside of the daily norm, and just exploring the world and what the world has to offer. That alone, I think, enriches us on a spiritual level, on a personal level, on a lot of levels. But that whole idea of truly unplugging from things you just cannot seem to get away from changing your perspective, going and connecting with people in a way, in a place, that you're just not going to do. It's just not going to happen on a Tuesday in your local coffee shop. You kind of have to set the intention of getting away and unplugging. And it might be you're doing your same yoga practice that you do in your home office or your home studio, but when you're doing it in a completely different place with a completely different mindset, with a different intention, it just gives you this inner peace and clarity. It recharges your batteries in a way that I find kind of difficult to do, otherwise. You just walk away coming back with this sense of peace, and of also like, when can I do that again? And, as you talked about coming back even just from a few days in New York and having such a positive experience and it kind of recharging your batteries and being kind of just so fun, re-entry to like the real world can be like, oh God, do I have to go back? Why can't I just live in Costa Rica for the rest of my life? Um, so there is that aspect, but it does make, once you charge those batteries up and you realize just how depleted you were, when you come back to your ordinary existence, you have that kind of, at least for me, I have that stupid grin that you cannot wipe off my face for months on end afterwards. It makes swimming through the daily, getting through your ordinary existence so much more pleasurable, enjoyable, because you did go and truly immerse yourself in this experience where you can just fully unplug, let go, not be responsible for all the things that you're responsible for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all the time. It's really a time to give yourself permission to just be still. Sometimes we don't know who we are. Sometimes we don't know the thing that's been stressing us out. Sometimes we really just cannot quiet the noise in our lives. So we have to go to this setting that takes us so far out of our norm, and into those vast moments of peace. And even though it's a group setting, there's moments of solitude that come with that in that curated experience. And so, it's an investment in yourself, in your mental health. And so that's, I think, the biggest. I don't know, that was 20 things. I don't know if there's one biggest thing, but my mental health relies on some sort of retreat for myself, whether it be but big or small. So I really enjoy that process of continuing to make those things happen in my life.
Yes, I love. Okay, so I love that you mentioned that most of your retreat experience is hosting retreats, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I definitely want to talk about the retreat that you are planning and organizing and have coming up. And I also like, for the people who aren't in this space right now who will listen to it later, I kind of want to talk about typical concerns that people have about taking a retreat. Like, I feel like it's really easy sometimes to make excuses not to invest in ourselves, whether it be it costs too much, I can't get the time off work. I've never been to this country before, and I don't speak the language, or it's going to be too intense, and I don't want to be vulnerable. And like, what are people usually concerned with, and how can they prepare for the retreat so that they can get the most of it? And what comes to my mind is like, if I'm going to go into a spiritual retreat, I want to kind of have an intention in mind in terms of, what is my end goal, what am I looking to get out of this? And maybe it is I just need to take a break, or maybe it's something else. Maybe I'm going there to focus on something specific. So yeah, let's talk about that a bit for those who will play this back and kind of weigh their options as your retreat comes up and any other retreats they might be interested in.
Absolutely. You really want to, when you're thinking about preparing for your retreat, right? As you said, you want to choose your intention. What is my intention going into this? And when you have that in mind, that can kind of start to narrow your lens for choosing what is it I want to get out of this. And sometimes it really is. I've had people, I've been on this side of planning retreats, and you might over plan and have this curated experience with loads of options and offerings for people, and then folks may come to two of your things and sit by the pool and get drunk all day. And you know what, that's their experience, and hey, you do you, boo. Like, but it's eye opening to have been on a few to know that everyone is in this to have their own experience. It's really awesome though to have a whole list of things and curated experience for people to be able to pick and choose so that they can choose their own adventure. Back to your question though, in terms of concerns people have, a lot of concerns are different now than they used to be in a post-COVID age. People do still wonder if they haven't done a lot of travel. Some of the folks that have raised concerns haven't really traveled even in the states, let alone outside of the states. So that's a concern still for people, and that's something that changes all the time. And if you just have to kind of tune in to the CDC. And I think the answer to any concern that starts to come up is to be in communication with whomever it is that's hosting, whether it's your host, a travel agent, the people that you're attending with, any of those concerns that you have. It's really important to have that open communication with your host, who's going to be in communication with the center that you're traveling to as well. I'm trying to think of what else. Is something that definitely is a concern is, hey, this sounds great. It's secluded, but am I completely isolated from other people? It's good to check in and know what the locale is going to be. How close are we going to be to the closest city, and do they have a hospital and those kinds of things? Okay, I'm going to be unplugged, but are my people going to be able to check on me? It's not like that weird show on Netflix, right? Like, I'll have my cell phone. Yes. Like, those are always going to be questions and concerns. And there are no questions or concerns that are silly, right? All of these things are valid and good to check in with. Trying to think of what else. Yeah, just, trying to get an idea of what that's going to look like when I get there. Are there going to be bugs? What's it going to be like, weather wise? And so it's really great when when you're planning for these things, to have a huge overview of what is the weather going to be like, not just during the day when we're at the beach, but in for example, the retreat that I have coming up, it's on top of a mountain. So the temperature on top of the mountain is going to be much cooler than when we're down on the beach during the day. And so, talking to your it's almost like camp counselors for a week, talking to your camp counselor for the week to know just exactly what to pack, what to plan for, what to anticipate. The more information you can have, really, the better you can plan, and the less you can stress. I think all of the planning you can do, time management, packing management, really knowing what your itinerary is going to look like. And again, that open communication can really help all of your stress melt away, so that when you're there, things run smoothly and seamlessly. And again, having that constant contact with your liaison, a person that's there with you, so that if you do have anything that comes up while you're there, you have someone that's got your back, that's taking care of you, that's helping do the legwork and look out for you. So yeah, those are things that come up. The other thing too, you might have people that really want to come, that have connected with you, that have been following you, but then it's a hard sell to maybe their support system at home, that have never met any of us, or maybe don't really have the same interest as their partner. And so it can be a challenge for partners to like really support someone who may really fully want to come. They're fully invested, they want to do the thing, but then to say, hey babe, I'm going to be in the jungle for a week, when babe is like, wait, who, where, what? That's a valid concern that comes up for people too.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think everyone's everyone's life is different, and a retreat fits into different people's lives in different ways. Like, for some people, a week out of the country might be no big deal, but for some people, maybe even getting a weekend, out of town is impossible. So it's kind of also about just like doing what's most feasible and most comfortable given your lifestyle, and also like considering costs, things of that nature. Sometimes it might be something where you have to save up for it. It might be something where you have to pay in installments. It's worth considering what your payment options are. And also, too, I think Yeah, retreats aren't for everyone. And I do think it's important to consider, if you have certain dietary restrictions, if you don't like being in close quarters with strangers and doing group activities with people you don't know, then maybe it's an environment where you would feel really uncomfortable and it would feel unnatural. So I do think, as Abby mentioned, it's really important to connect with whoever is, putting on the schedule and the activities, and find out from them the different rules and guidelines and what you need to expect so that you can figure out if it's aligned with your values or not. I haven't had any personal retreat experiences that have been off-putting or uncomfortable. But I could definitely see how, if someone came into certain experiences not expecting it, or being averse to it, how it could kind of deter them. So yeah, what do you think about that, Abby, in terms of just kind of also, like, having the experience at the retreat, but then also how you integrate it following the retreat? And, and how you decide, is this even the retreat for me, and kind of how you weigh your options and things like that.
Right. Yeah. No, I think coming back to like, and you may not have a clear intention at first. It may be that, hey, I want to go to a specific location, right? Maybe that's where you start your journey. But generally, especially if we're talking about a spiritual retreat, there's going to be some component to it that appeals to you, whether it's a retreat that's centered around meditation, maybe it's a retreat that's centered around yoga. Well, yoga can be this huge umbrella, right? As we know, maybe it's a really vigorous ashtanga yoga retreat where you're going to be doing very intense physical vinyasa yoga morning, day, and night. If you don't know that going in and you think you're going and doing really gentle, chair yoga, then you're going to be really bummed out when you get to that retreat and you're not going to have a good time. And so it's just like in the crypto world, right? You got to do your own research a little bit. I think it's really great to kind of not just like, okay, yoga retreat, what kind of yoga, and get a deeper look at the styles, what the physical level, not just of yoga but even of the retreat center itself. As you said, maybe there's folks who don't want to feel like they're on top of each other, so they may want to go to a place where they feel like they can really spread out. Everyone's, as you said, going to have a different idea in mind, a different ideal level of comfort, ideal level of how much physical demand there might be on, even the location itself. And so it's always good to kind of have those list of questions, think about those things, think outside the box a little bit, and really get specific with your questions and know yourself well enough to know, yeah, if I know I don't really, love a real physical yoga practice, or whatever it might be, or if I know chanting is going to make me feel super uncomfortable, but they've mentioned mantra in this description of this thing, then maybe this isn't for me. So always good to ask really good questions, to be active listener, and yeah, just express those concerns so folks can talk you through it and maybe, point you in the direction of something that might feel more aligned with what your personal interests are.
Absolutely. Because the worst thing would be to set up, get the time off, spend the money, get out there, and then have an experience that, for whatever reason, is not aligned with you, and just doesn't work for you personally. So that being said, we've talked a lot about, like, kind of the, almost the basics of spiritual retreat, in terms of what's a retreat, why do people take them, what are the different benefits you can get from them, how you can choose one, how you can prepare, what to expect. But now I kind of want to start to dive into, like, the actual retreat that you are planning and have coming up. And I want to talk about kind of what inspired it. What is your intention as the organizer? What do you hope to accomplish? Kind of what are some of the activities that you have organized, and just kind of tell me about your spiritual retreat.
Well, I'm super excited to do that, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. We don't usually like really like shill our projects or talk about too much of our stuff on here, I suppose. I have really had the honor of hosting some really cool retreats, but this one feels completely different. In the past, I've been at really lovely resorts. This particular retreat center is going to be like whoever signs up, we have the entire place to ourselves, and so it's really unique in that way. It's a 250-acre nature reserve on top of a mountain in Costa Rica. Like, would they have to take a 4x4 and get us up to the top of the mountain? So that's a good thing to know, right? If you're like, I just want to be where I can just go from the airport straight to the hotel. If that's what you're looking for, this isn't that experience. This is truly it's going to take us a day to get to the retreat center up on that mountain. They will take us to town. We're 20 minutes from the beach. They take us, we have the option to go every day, although there will be a couple, I think 2 of the 5 days where they take us and we stay for the afternoon. It is again this kind of spread out place in the jungle. There's a portion that overlooks the sea, and we're on the south side of the Caribbean. And then there's a portion that overlooks the jungle. And you can kind of choose when you're choosing your lodging which you'd rather be situated looking at. And there's a few different types of lodging. So for those who don't want to be on top of each other, there's an option for you. For those who are like, listen, I just want to go. I don't care. I'll share the guest house. I want to go and I want to get the most economical thing. Then there's a guest house with you still have a private room, but there's shared bathrooms there, and a shared veranda. There's also casitas, these little classic casitas. The little two level have a loft, and they're meant to be shared with three participants. And those are closest to like where all the activity happens, like where the yoga. I think there's actually two. There's a covered yoga, a beautiful wooden yoga room, open air room, and then there's like a that has a deck over, or excuse me, a roof over the top of it. And then there's a deck that doesn't have a roof, a meditation center, and then the dining, like all of those things, and the pool and the hot tub are kind of centrally located, but still in this, again, very open air, spread out, lovely place. But those classic casitas are more around like the hub of where things are happening. And then there's the private preferred casitas are meant to be for one or two people, and those are kind of set off more in a more private feeling. So if you do want to feel like, I don't want to interact with people, you definitely do not have to. And there are trails set up throughout this into the jungle where we can have guided walks with our guides there, with this privately owned facility. They'll take us on the guided walks where there are waterfall hikes, where we'll be not interacting, but immersed in seeing sloths and howler monkeys and toucans and, all the flora and fauna that you would imagine in a rainforest. We will be right there, immersed inside of. And there is, it's set up to be vegetarian, so it's all inclusive of your 3 meals a day. It's all vegetarian. You can purchase fish and chicken for a nominal fee extra if you're, as you were talking about, if you have dietary needs, we can certainly address that. But it's set up to be, a vegetarian experience, all organic, fresh from the markets to the facility. The Brie Brie Reservation is nearby, and we'll have a half day experience where we go to the Brie Brie Reservation to learn about the local native tribe there and their customs. We'll have cacao ceremony and fire ceremony with that tribe. And then we'll have education on sacred plants. This is not going to be a retreat set around, ayahuasca and those kinds of things, but we'll be able to learn about that and learn about what they do, and kind of have access to be able to ask questions of some of those sacred ceremonies from the Bribri tribe there. I'm really excited to be co-hosting this with Janice Stearns. So many of you here in Web3 and that have hung out with us many times here on this podcast know and love Janice Stern. She is a psychic and spiritual advisor. And so in addition to like this facility has a bunch planned for us, right? Like they are going to take us to town. They have a yoga teacher there. They have a massage for everybody, an Ayurvedic consultation for everybody. They have it in these walks and all these things set up for us. But then Jana and I will also be offering our yoga and my yoga and meditation, and she'll be doing workshops on crystals and astrology and tarot. And really kind of giving people access to what we've all sat and enjoyed here in Twitter spaces, but they're in person. And to really get some one-on-one, just I don't know, just really beautiful time and knowledge. She'll be offering some readings and some additional services too. Of course, there's all sorts of additional things you can add on, but the whole focus and goal will be to truly unplug. Like there is Wi-Fi at the like main little central hub, but the electricity is spotty sometimes. It's the jungle. The Wi-Fi is going to be spotty, and so we'll really plan to fully unplug. Like we won't be like able to post and be on our Twitter spaces and all of those things for the most part. And so it'll really be this opportunity. They call this practice, I can't think of, there's a Japanese term for it I can't think of, but this practice of jungle bathing, of where we go into the jungle and just being immersed in that energy. And as I talked about before, this idea of really unplugging and fully being able to recharge, I think this will be on a level I don't even know that I've ever experienced. And so just the idea and opportunity to do that excites me like I fully can't explain. So yeah, a true unplugging experience. This is also set up to be an alcohol free experience. Yes, if someone needs or wants, of course, this is choose your own adventure. But sometimes when you go to an all inclusive, they kind of harangue you into drinking a lot, and they give you a hard time if you don't. And so I love that this is set up to truly be a spiritual experience where no one's like encouraging it or including it. It's very discreetly there if you want to go do it, but the whole vibe and the whole really experience is going to be set up in this way to support this true cleanse from start to finish. And when we cleanse ourselves of all the stuff that we're always kind of doing on our daily, even if you normally do meat and alcohol, this is giving you this opportunity to truly strip away all of the daily things that clog us up, fully take and unplug from modern daily society and just be immersed in something truly unlike anything you'll be able to experience in your local environment. It's taking yourself out of your daily, as I said before, it's kind of this low tech, high vibe experience, so that you can come back and get through all of your ordinary existence until it starts to wear off and you plan your next fun adventure, you know?
Oh my, this sounds absolutely incredible. I love all the context that you provided in terms of like just different caveats where, hey, here's something that you might not be comfortable with, but we have an alternative. Um, or hey, like this is what we're doing. If you're not down for it, like if you don't want to be mountaintop, like maybe it's not for you. I feel like that's super important because I've definitely been on vacation experiences. And I feel like for some people, a spiritual retreat is a vacation of sorts. It's a break, and I've been on, yeah, I've had experiences where there wasn't an option. And as you said, things felt forced, or it was like, the group is doing this and it's like you have to participate. And it's nice that people can choose to be up close and personal or a bit more often by themselves. And if they want to opt in, they can opt in. And if not, they can, choose their own adventure, as you said. It sounds incredible. It sounds beautiful. It sounds like you have a really thoughtful itinerary in terms of everything you're going to be doing. And my gosh, I can't imagine what it's going to be like to just be in the jungle surrounded by nature and the sounds of wilderness and bugs and creatures. It just sounds absolutely incredible. So, if I'm listening to this and I'm liking what I'm hearing and I want to get more information or sign up for a wait list or put a deposit down, like what is my next best step? Where can I get more info? And how should I prepare for this retreat specifically? You know, do I need to bring a journal? Like, do you recommend that people come coupled or come solo? Like, any kind of tips for this one in particular?
I so appreciate you asking this, by the way. I really and truly do. If you go to the Elevate Lifestyle and Wellness, um, I suppose this is for listeners later, but at Elevate, ELEV, the number eight, NFT, my Twitter, there is a link there in the bio, and that'll take you to the Elevate Shopify. And I do have set up to take registration deposits at this time. When you put down your $500 registration deposit, it shows there on the Shopify some of your different lodging options. And you just indicate if you're doing single or double occupancy and which one of those lodging options that you prefer. And while it's great to travel with someone, you certainly can be solo. And if you want to be solo and you want to be in a casita with two other people because you want to save a little bit, but still have the casita rather than the guest house. You just kind of let me know what your options are, and we can really help pair you with someone that we think you would resonate with. And in terms of preparing for this one, we'll definitely be having, especially as the group continues to shape up, we'll have a WhatsApp group that we communicate on because that'll be the way we communicate once we're in Costa Rica anyway. And so we'll start that group now where we can continuously keep in touch, where we can share any updated information and where we can get to know each other. Because once we get there, I do always have little fun games like scavenger hunt and little fun things that really help break the ice and help us to bond and get together. So that WhatsApp uh, group will be created. And then we'll have some Zooms because you will want to really pack in a way that makes sense with the environment that we'll be in. So we'll want to inform people of how to pack for each day because yeah, we'll want long sleeves and long pants in the evenings when we're having dinner in the mountaintop, and also your beach wear for the daytime, and things like bringing your own water bottle as they have water brought in, but you'll want to refill your own water bottle, things like that. Yes, definitely a journal, maybe a GoPro because again, your tech isn't gonna maybe work as well as you like it to on the daily basis, but you might want to still take some gorgeous pictures. So a GoPro, and things that will help you keep your things waterproof because it is the rainforest and it is the jungle. And so you'll definitely want to plan on things getting wet. And so don't bring your most favorite, most expensive, most luxurious yoga pants and yoga gear. I almost think as your sweatiest, grimiest hot yoga sometimes, right? You want to be cute, but you also want to wear stuff that's all right to wick that moisture and that you can dry out. And to think about your electronics and stuff and not overdo your electronics because again, this is a time to unplug. You'll want to bring an assortment of little crystals with you, for sure, because we'll be charging our crystals. Jana is known as a walking crystal encyclopedia, much like you, my friend Sierra. But she'll be, kind of helping people understand how to connect with their crystals and talking about those in a little workshop. So it'd be good to, as I've said, pack your crystals, and I meant it. And so those are things to prepare. And yeah, we'll have some Zooms along the way and that WhatsApp to keep everybody really just super informed on what to pack and how to plan. and what to bring, so that you feel super prepared.
I absolutely love that. I can just tell by everything that you just shared that you and Jana are very meticulously and thoughtfully planning this, and that whoever decides to have this journey and experience with you is going to be really well taken care of. And I love that you're allowing people to connect and get to know each other before getting out there, and it's not going to be like, oh, you just show up and it's like a reality show in terms of balancing different personality types. It's like it'll give people a chance to get to know each other and decide, like, hey, I spent the last 6+ months connecting with this person on WhatsApp. Maybe I do want to share a space with them, or whatever the case may be. So I think that is incredible. It sounds really phenomenal. And yeah, the reason I'm asking all these questions is I'm hoping that we'll be able to use this YouTube episode as a point of reference that you can share with people, as they're considering whether they want to come to the retreat or not. And I'm trying to think what other questions they might have, so that as they're listening, it will kind of be like an FAQ for them. Is there anything else about the retreat in particular that you feel is important to share? Maybe the dates. I think I know it's I think it's about 11 months out or so. Yeah, let me confirm the dates for me.
Absolutely. Thank you again for asking. The dates for the retreat are March 9th through the 14th of 2024. And so we we arrive at the retreat center on the 9th and we exit the retreat center on the 14th. I will say we need to get to Costa Rica the day before, and it'll probably be the day after that we actually exit. So again, we'll be in excuse me, I'm so sorry, in close contact, because your fee that you pay includes everything. Once you get to Costa Rica, your flight to and from Costa Rica is you. But once you get there, that whole process of staying overnight and trekking to the retreat center, that's all included, as well as your accommodations, as well as your food, as well as many experiences. The daily trekking back and forth to the beaches, a massage for everyone, all of the yoga. So there's so much that's built in, but including that whole day that we trek in and out. So I guess it's really, if you're taking the time off, take that whole week from March 8th through the 15th off of 2024. And again, it's in Costa Rica. You fly into the San Jose airport, and then we take care of you completely from there until we get you back to that San Jose airport. Trying to think of what else to do. I can't remember if you asked something else besides the dates. We do have some AMAs coming up, so you can get to know Jana a little bit more. So those will be on Twitter. We have one coming up soon. Of course, this will air later, but don't hesitate to reach out via DM, open book. It will be limited to only 24 participants, so that we can keep just the vibes immaculate. And so we can keep it a really lovely experience. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have along the way.
Incredible. 24 people. That sounds like the perfect size. I know too small can be almost awkward in a sense, and too big can get clicky and people kind of break up into groups. But that's like the perfect size. That's like a classroom full of people, which is lovely. Yeah, I guess one question I would ask is, you pay a deposit, and then at what point would people have to expect kind of finalizing and settling up, paying the remaining balance before the trip, so that they can, not have to think about it and just be ready to go?
So the deadline to sign up actually isn't until October. So there's plenty of time to even get that deposit in, although it's first come, first serve. So as it books up, maybe that date may not exist as we continue to fill up. But the nice thing about it being on Shopify is you can make payments. And if there's a payment arrangement that's not on Shopify, we can work something else out. Like I'm even taking crypto for this. But once you get your deposit in, then we follow up and figure out that payment plan that's going to be comfortable for you. Most people are going to do the Shopify where it breaks into four payments before, I think it's before January, um, is would be your final payment would be in, I think is what we decided. So really flexible payment options gives you lots of time to plan and to break it into bite-sized chunks so it doesn't feel like you know how it goes with that kind of stuff, right? Investing in ourselves is great, but it's great if we can do it in a way that feels comfortable and not so painful all at once.
Absolutely. I'm a Shopify maxi and I love the installment payment options that Shopify has. And yeah, I think it's anything over $50 actually. You can break out into four payments and pay it over time, which is really awesome. And then yeah, there are also ways to accept crypto, and that's amazing that you're giving people the option to pay with crypto. Fantastic. I love that. Yeah, no, it sounds incredible. It sounds like it's going to be quite an experience, one to remember for a long time to come. And I'm starting to feel like, I might have to block off that week and maybe I come on the retreat. Maybe I'm out there. But no, it sounds incredible. Thank you so much for just being so thorough and sharing all the details about it. And even if someone decides this isn't the particular retreat for them, it helps give a full picture of what a retreat could look like, what one of many types of retreats could look like. It helps you kind of start to figure out, is this for me or is this not for me? Is this the vibe and ambiance I could be into, or maybe you're looking for like a desert retreat. Maybe you're like we were saying, you're looking for a New York City retreat and you want some hustle and bustle because your day to day is really really quiet, so yeah, I feel like this was really helpful just in terms of giving context and color, and I appreciate that. And we are coming up on our hour. So you let me know if there's anything else you want to share as it relates to this particular retreat, or retreats in general.
Not that I can really think of other than just, do what feels right for you and find what resonates and understand that nothing happens without a plan. I hear a lot of people say, "I wish I could travel. I wish I could go do a thing." And I think more people can than they realize. There are more options out there than you realize. It just takes a plan. So don't be afraid to really look into doing something special for yourself, but plan ahead and don't be afraid to ask questions, and do that research and do what feels really good for you and right for you.
Well said. Absolutely. Different strokes for different folks. This has been incredible. I love coming together every week. It felt weird last week not having our weekly space, although it was nice to have a change from the usual and hang out in New York. Next week, we'll come together again and we'll talk about yoga. It's been a while since we've touched on yoga, and we're specifically going to talk about accessible yoga poses for beginners. So, who knows? Perhaps this will also help prepare people for the retreat because you're going to be doing some yoga, and it is important to kind of understand the safe starting points for beginners and newbies. When you get into yoga, there are variations of a pose, and there are, kind of beginners and basic, and then you can get more elevated and, kind of challenge yourself more. But it's important to kind of find what's most comfortable for you, and start where is most appropriate for your own body. So I'm really excited to talk about that next week. This has been awesome. I appreciate you, Abby. I feel inspired to book a spiritual retreat now. And yeah, I can't wait to talk again next week.